Yeah, of course.
All right, well, kia ora everybody. It's fantastic to be here at Waitangi, my first official visit to Waitangi as Prime Minister, and a great opportunity this morning to engage with iwi leaders and have some good conversation about the work that we've been doing together over the last 5.5 years and what we can continue to work on in the future. I got a sense of their priorities and I was able to convey to them the government's commitment to continuing to work with Maori to advance the issues that we have been working on previously. It is an incredibly important relationship for us. I also heard their concern that they don't want to see ethnicity, race being used as a way of dividing New Zealanders, and I was able to absolutely reiterate my government's commitment to ensuring that we continue to work together to avoid that happening. And so we had some good conversation. It was the start of what I'm sure will be a good, strong working relationship.
What was the top topic?
Look, I think where there is uncertainty, where there is a lack of clarity, that can lead to fear. Politicians who use that fear or exploit that fear in order to try and gain political advantage really need to reflect on their own actions. That's something that my government will never do.
Who are you referring to then? Who are you referring to?
What was that? I think part of it is a reflection of the breadth of our work program as a government, and that the more you're doing, the more confusing it can be for people who maybe aren't engaged in it on a day-to-day basis. That is something that I've already said we've reflected on as a government, and that we'll be taking that on board. What I've said, of course, previously is that co-governance can be applied very differently in different contexts, and self-determination can also be applied differently in different contexts. And one of the challenges that we've had, Jane, is that because we've been doing so many different things, actually we probably haven't created the space to make sure people understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. And that has absolutely, I think, been a lesson for us over the last 5 years, and it's something that we have all reflected on, and you'll see some change in that regard.
Can we expect you to change the sort of language that you're using when you talk about co-governance?
I think you can expect greater clarity for us about what we're talking about in a particular context, why we're talking about it, why we're doing it.
Can you start now? I mean, what does co-governance mean in your perspective?
Well, like I said, it's about working together, but how we work together will mean that will look different in different situations. Look, I love the phrase mahi tahi, working together. Ultimately that's what it's about. It's about the Crown working with Maori to advance our common interests. Look, as I said, that's partly a reflection of the breadth of the work program that we've had.
Did iwi leaders specifically raise changing the term co-governance to something like mahi tahi?
It wasn't mentioned in that kind of context, but I guess it was mentioned in the sense that they don't want the concept of co-governance to be used to stoke fear, and nor do we.
Do you think
Yeah.
Can you tell us some of the other things that were discussed, the priorities coming from the
Look, we took the opportunity to work through what's been achieved over the last 5.5 years. They were able to present to me areas where they're really proud of the work that they have been doing with government and where they want to see us go next. And it's the bread and butter issues that I've been talking about. It's things like housing, it's things like advancing education, advancing health. Those are all issues that are of priority for them, and they are a priority for me and for the government.
What do you take away from that meeting in terms of the key priority messages from those iwi?
That I got a real sense from the iwi chairs that they want to continue to work with the government, and that actually the issues that they want to work with us on are many of the issues that I have been talking about in the last few weeks. Look, like I said, it was things like housing, education, health. Those things are integrally important, and we've made some progress working together in those areas. There's a lot more that we can do. Yeah. It wasn't raised in the meeting, but I'm absolutely confident. We've got more Maori in our executive team lineup, I think, than we've ever had before. I'm absolutely committed to drawing on all of their skills. I think it's been misunderstood, and those who seek to use misunderstanding around it for political advantage need to reflect on their own behaviour. Well, look, people can form their own judgments about that, but I certainly think the opposition, and National and ACT, have used to, as they have done in the past, they've used uncertainty to try and stoke fear.
In Australia, they have decided that they don't put positions to build on the neck 90% of the point. Is that something that you would consider for Auckland, for example?
I haven't even thought of that.
But is that something that we could see as, changing out, Maori leaders or
I believe we already have Maori leaders on our banknotes. Look, of course there are always going to be opportunities for us to be more New Zealand in the future, and I think that's something, as we become a more independent and proudly independent nation, then we will see more signs of New Zealand's history reflected in our day-to-day lives as well.
Any ideas
Did the iwi leaders raise the question of water allocation? And if so, can you see any solution in sight?
No, I don't think it was specifically raised.
Were there ideas and concerns raised, though, about Three Waters and the proposed reset that you've talked about?
Look, it was mentioned, but in the broader context of the work that we are doing together, and iwi leaders seeking a commitment from the government that we'll continue to work together on these issues, and of course we will.
In the context of the housing discussions, was that sort of more broadly around RMA reform, and if so, what were the sort of specifics on that?
Look, it was actually quite bread and butter. It was about how do we build more houses, and there's a real commitment from iwi to work with the government to build more houses. We want to do that.
Because there has obviously been concerns from Tainui, for example, around RMA reform and what that might mean for treaty settlements.
Yeah.
Was any of that a discussion point today?
It wasn't specifically discussed today, but of course we'll continue to have those discussions with iwi.
How soon can we expect that Three Waters reset?
I'm not going to put a specific time frame on it because it will take as long as it takes. But we'll be aiming to progress it and provide certainty as quickly as we can.
In the coming weeks.
Because the actual pro-governance issue, part of it is the group that appoints the representatives. Are you willing to actually look at a fundamental part of it and changing their part of it?
Jane, I haven't said a lot in terms of ruling things in or out, but what I have said is one thing I will rule out is no reform. There is absolutely no question that we can't continue with the status quo. It is not delivering New Zealanders the water services that they need and that they deserve. And it also, if we leave it just with the status quo, it's going to, one thing it will deliver is significantly higher rates for households. And I'm not willing to just stand back and say, well, that's a council problem to deal with.
Are you worried about a risk to the relationship with Maori if you start to change that too much? Because, as I said, it's been legislated for in terms of that representation. Is that a risk as well?
Look, I'm not going to speculate on what we may or may not do until we've actually had the opportunity to consider it.
Is that reset?
Yes. Again, that wasn't something that we specifically discussed today, but it is an active, it is something that the Cabinet has yet to, I think we've got some further decisions to come on that. And so I won't get ahead of the collective decision-making process on that one. What was that? Well, of course, as Prime Minister, my job is to lead the Cabinet, and then once we've made a decision as a Cabinet, I'll convey it to you. That wasn't specifically discussed, no.
Can you see a future where the Crown gives back the Crown-owned land in Northland to Te Raki Maori?
There's active treaty settlement discussions up here, as there have been for some time, and it's a complex. It's probably one of the most complex discussions. Minister Little's probably the one to give you an update on the specifics of that at this point.
But as Prime Minister, could you see a future where the Crown gives back that land, all of the land here in Northland that it owns?
Look, I'm not going to get ahead of the treaty settlement process by making announcements in a media conference.
Just on the Three Water reform stuff, you obviously need some of that criticism to subside in order to continue pushing through. Auckland Council wasn't particularly supportive. Presumably a number of Aucklanders aren't supportive either. You've you've been in Auckland a lot the last few
Yep.
days. We've seen what's happened with the flooding. Do you think that support for Three Waters is turning around?
Look, I had a good conversation with the Mayor of Auckland about that yesterday. We've committed to continuing to talk to each other about it. I welcome that. I think it's a great opportunity for us to work together to make sure we're on the same page.
But do you think, having spoken to presumably a number of businesses and people on the ground who've been affected by this, do you think that you can turn the criticism of Three Waters around based on what has happened in the last week?
Look, I think everybody acknowledges that what we're doing now around the way we manage our water infrastructure in New Zealand is not sustainable, and it has left us with a pretty disgraceful legacy, frankly, of that core infrastructure being run down. No one has said to me things should stay exactly as they are.
Is the reset a matter of weeks
Right,
or months?
I'm going to have to go to a housing thing shortly, but we'll do a couple more questions.
Just on pro-governance, so is this a commitment that you're going to stop using the term pro-governance in favour of climate governance?
No, that's not what I've said. Yeah. Well, I think we have to accept that as a result of climate change, we're going to see more extreme weather events. And stormwater, which is an integral part of the Three Waters system, is going to continue to come under more pressure. And we know that in some parts of the country, stormwater is just not equipped to cope with that.
And that Three Waters reset.
Today has been concerned that Kaimātua are not getting the support they need. That the agencies around government aren't aren't helping, especially in flooding now at Maori. Are you going to ask, the Office of Seniors, Climate Water, to actually get out there and do a bit more to help these Kaimātua turn out on this?
Look, I have seen the work that government agencies are doing on the ground in Auckland. I've gone and visited them personally, as have a lot of the people who are standing behind me. We've had a very active ministerial presence on the ground in Auckland, and we'll continue to do that in the coming weeks. This is going to go on for a period of time, long after the floodwaters have subsided. The challenge will be ahead of Auckland for a while yet, and I can give people an absolute reassurance that we will have ministers working to make sure government agencies are lined up and providing as much support as possible to those who have been displaced.
Is this Three Waters?
Yeah. Sorry, what was that? Look, I haven't had the chance to read the report, so I'm not going to comment on it until I've had a chance to read it.
On Three Waters, that reset, is that a matter of weeks or months?
Again, I don't want to put a specific time frame on it. It'll take as long as it takes. All right, thanks everybody. Cheers.